Bob Ezrin. Welcome to Q.
Hi, Tom.
No regrets about being here so far anyway?
No regrets so far.
It's nice to be here at the CBC with you. Didn't it all start?
It did. I was a CBC brat. When I was 8 years old and my little brothers were 5.5, they're identical twins, we used to do television here in the early days, live. And also we were the voices of Shreddies.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What was the, do you remember the tagline?
I remember the whole jingle.
Can you do it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Eat up, and treat yourself to Shreddies, the bright new day cereal with the whole wheat. Good flavor. and we were told to smile when we sing that. Yeah. So we were, and apparently that ran for years and years.
Yeah.
My parents collected the checks.
Right. You never saw a cent.
I never saw a dime.
No.
No.
If you're listening right now, you can get that back. Shreddies is listening right now.
Yeah.
If only they knew what they had.
Nabisco.
So I thought today what we'd do is we'd listen to some music that might be meaningful to you, music
Okay.
you've worked on, music you might have a history with. I want to start at the beginning with this.
Shades of night are falling and I'm lonely, standing on the corner, oh, so blue. Sweethearts having fun, pass me one by one. Guess I'll wind up like I always do, with only me
And my shadow. I thought I did an exceptional job on that record, don't you?
You sound great.
I sounded really good on that. Yes, my career's way longer than people realize.
That's a little bit of Whispering Jack Smith performing his version of Me and My
was.
Shadow. Bob, I know there was a different version performed in your household.
Well, yeah, my grandfather was a song and dance man at night and a linotype operator by day. He used to do Yiddish theater, and basically any time he could tread the boards, he would. And he used to teach me song and dance routines when I was just a little baby. So Me and My Shadow was the first thing that I learned with him. We would dance together and sing it together. And I did the same thing with my daughter, Sarah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Same kind of song? Same songs?
Same song and the same routine, two top hats and all that stuff. We did it for a talent show on a cruise ship from Vancouver to Alaska.
Nice.
We won.
Oh, I bet you did.
Yes, we
I
did.
bet they'd be afraid if you didn't. So do you remember that being different at the time, having a grandfather who was into vaudeville?
Well, there was a lot of culture in the Jewish community in this town. Same thing with the Italian communities and Portuguese and so on. The Europeans who came here, they kept their dreams of the homeland and stuff alive by singing, dancing, getting together and just enjoying their culture and then the new culture that they just discovered. So in our family, we had singers, we had piano players. My mom was a classical pianist. She was good enough to be a concert pianist, but she was too shy to play in public.
Right.
And my dad, who was fearless, was a bass player in the Bobby Jimby Orchestra.
The Bobby Jimby Orchestra.
Yes, sir.
Wow. And what kind of group were they?
You don't know? Oh my God, you're fired.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but I mean, like Bobby Jimby, they were a national treasure. They wrote the song Canada, 2, 3, 4, 5 Canadians, whatever.
That's the Bobby.
Well, that was Bobby Jimby, and but his orchestra, they were a big band, a big dance band. They used to play all along the QEW,
Really?
From the Boulevard Club down to Niagara Falls, and my dad would play in the band after school, and that's how he worked his way through medical school.
Did you feel like you had a choice in being a musician?
No. I was born singing and listening, and it's not just the music. It's also performance. Like I was sort of a born performer. And
It's interesting to me that you're a born performer. Yet we're mainly going to talk about your behind the scenes work.
But it's all a performance.
I guess so, hey?
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about how the kind of the performative
Sure.
nature of the production. What's your earliest memory of playing music yourself?
Well, my earliest memory, it's not playing music, but it is when I was 1, and I do have a visual memory of this.
Right.
I used to select the records that I liked. My mom had bought me a little record player. So I could select the records I liked from recognizing the labels, and I still have a memory of some of those labels, and I would put them on the little turntable and try not to kill them while I was playing them and stuff.
Like what records?
Well, you know what? I don't remember the music. I just remember the visual of
That's
the
nice.
label. But these were, these would have been like, nursery rhymes and stuff like that. Things you could buy through the Eaton's catalog.
So tell me about the penny farthing in Toronto.
Wow. Okay. So
What was the penny farthing?
the penny farthing is the penny farthing was a folk club on Yorkville.
Yeah, there was another one too, wasn't there? Like
There were more than another.
what was the one that Lightfoot used to play at? And
The Riverboat.
The Riverboat.
So there was a point at which, for 2 years, may have been 3 summers, where Yorkville turned itself into a pedestrian mall only, and every second door was a coffee house. The Penny Farthing was a coffee house that my uncle co-owned with a guy named John McHugh.
Mm-hmm.
And they featured, at the Penny Farthing, I saw this blind kid from South America who came to North America for the first time, played there, named Jose Feliciano, and Joni Anderson, who was this beautiful blonde girl from Alberta that I was desperately in love with, but she was 19 and I was a mere 15.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Joni Mitchell, of course.
wow,
And,
really?
and next door, there was a club where a band called The Sparrow played. Next door was the Minor Bird, and that was Neil Young and Rick James's frontman for a soul band.
Yeah, right. I've
Yeah.
seen photos of this.
It's
yeah,
true.
yeah,
It
yeah.
exists. And then a little further down, then there was the Sparrow, which was John Kay and the guy who became Mars Bonfire. This was their band, and then of course they went on to be Steppenwolf.
Steppenwolf,
And
right.
across the street was a band called John Lee and the Checkmates, who were kind of a soul, like a blue-eyed soul band that went on to be Rhinoceros, who were very big in the States and stuff. The street was hopping, and of course the Riverboat, which was where Gordy played almost every week, and some kid from New York who could play a harmonica and guitar and sang folk songs came up, and Bob Dylan, and did a stint there for a week and just toured, just changed the world.
Did you see it? Did you see Dylan at the
Yeah.
Riverboat?
Yes, I did.
How was it?
It was transformative. I'd never seen
For
any-
you?
Well, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about this is that because there were so many clubs and so many people playing, and I was playing with my cousin sometimes, and sometimes just on my own.
Folk songs?
Yeah, folk songs.
What kind of stuff?
Tim Hardin, and I was playing from the sort of folk, the great folk songbook, and Gordy too. I learned the Canadian Railway Trilogy.
That's
was
not
my-
easy.
No,
No.
it was not easy. And I talked to him about it, a few decades ago.
Right.
But anyway. But so at that time, there were so many clubs and so many different places for people to try their craft, to hone their craft. And the interesting thing about having an area like that is so concentrated is that you finish your set and you go next door and you see somebody else who's better than you, and you have what I call a holy shit moment. You stand there and look at the stage, you go, oh my God, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And then you have to go home and practice really hard because you want to be that good. And that the domino effect of that, the knock-on effect of that for all these people. Denny Doherty was there in a
From
band.
the Mamas and the Papas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like all these people were there at the same time, and they made each other better. And of course, when you see a Bob Dylan and you hear those lyrics for the first time, you're like, whoa.
Right. So
We can talk about important stuff.
is this around the time you're studying composition at the conservatory?
Yeah, that didn't last very long.
Well, you went on to study composition at the Royal Conservatory here in Toronto.
Yeah.
So, I find it interesting for a guy steeped in production the way you are. So that didn't take, hey, classical composition.
It wasn't classical composition. It was modern composition.
But it was 12-tone scale. It was notated composition.
Oh, well, I could already read and write.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to learn more about how to take things from my head, put them on a piece of paper, and have them come out music.
Right.
That's quite a process. It's an interesting thing. It's not a natural thing. And so I took lessons from a guy who was a really frustrated composer and who was resentful as hell of having to teach privileged kids from wherever that got sent to this institution. So he tolerated us at best, and it wasn't a great experience. So I just I didn't last very long. But I learned a few things, and for me, the best part about that was every time I arrived at the conservatory, I'd have to walk down the halls, and behind every door, there was a different kind of music. It was brilliant, and had a lot to do with building my love affair with the orchestra.
So when did you know, I want to talk about the orchestra in a second, but when did you know that the job of producer even existed?
I was working on a show called Spring Thaw, which was a Canadian...
Sounds like a Canadian show, doesn't it?
Totally. Yeah. Canadian annual review, which was a satirical review of music and sketches and so on. I was the book editor on Spring Thaw.
Oh, that makes sense to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Working for Howard Bateman was a producer at the CBC. He had a show called Sunday Morning, which if you go into the archives, you'll find. And I wrote sketches for Sunday Morning from time to time. So he hired me to be book editor of this show. Part of my job was to find gag writers, sketch writers. So I hired Lorne Michaels and Hart Pomerantz and Roy Schoikert, and I'm trying to remember the other guys, and I can't. And I went out looking for music. And we wanted to be pertinent. We wanted to be contemporary. So he said, well, let's do rock music. Let's do something. And I said, I know all about that, which I didn't at all.
Right. You were a folky.
I was kind of a folky.
Modern.
But at the time, I was co-managing a band. I'm making inverted commas in the air here.
Good radio move right there.
There you go.
Thank you.
I was co-managing a band with Michael Cole, who you may have heard of, who went on to be the
legendary promoter.
And Michael and I were co-managing this band called Icarus, the lead singer of which was Eddie Schwartz, who wrote "Hit Me with Your Best Shot."
Yeah.
Among many other things.
I met Eddie Schwartz not that long ago. Lovely guy.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
So we're co-managing, and they said, well, we need rock music. So I said to Michael, let's get the band in the show. We could, this is a gig. They'll pay.
We'll get Icarus in.
Yeah, we'll get Icarus in. So we made Icarus the house band. We found material. And the music director of the show was a guy named Alan McMillan, who was partners with Jack Richardson and Ben McPeak and Peter Clayton in Nimbus 9 Productions.
So Jack Richardson, legendary producer, worked with the Guess Who.
They had the Guess Who signed to Nimbus 9 Records. And as a result of working on the show, Alan said, I want you to meet my partner, Jack. He needs somebody like you. I don't know. So
someone who got what the kids were into.
Maybe I don't know. So I had worked on arrangements. There was a time when he couldn't come in, and I worked on some arrangements. He loved it.
Plus, he might have seen that you were bold. You seemed like a bold kid, right?
Yeah, I was pretty bold.
Yeah.
So I went. So he set up a meeting, and I went to see Jack, and I went, Jack, I want to be a manager. I want to work with bands on their songs. I want to help them go in the studio. And he said, no, you don't. And he said, you don't want to be a manager. You want to be a producer. And you're hired.
How did you know you didn't want to be a performer?
I don't know that there was a point at which I knew that I wasn't, that I didn't want to be a performer. I would have loved being a performer, but, I got married at a very early age. We got pregnant at a very early age. Yeah. We had a child by the time I was 17.
Oh, my.
And so, going on the road and playing and all that sort of stuff, that just wasn't going to fly.
Right.
And I was in Alice Cooper for about 15 minutes.
What did you play?
I played keyboards in Alice Cooper. Well, there are pictures of me. They dressed me like little Lord Fauntleroy. I had this like frilly frock, but with thigh-high sheepskin boots. So I will never send that to you.
I'm glad you mentioned Alice, because I want to talk about this. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Bob Ezrin, one of the most influential record producers in the history of music. If you've listened to Lou Reed, Pink Floyd, Peter Gabriel, Kiss, then you've heard his work. I want to talk about that band you just mentioned, your first gig as a producer.
Yes.
Take a listen to this.
I'm 18 and I don't know what I want. 18, I just don't know what I want. 18,
I'm edgy.
I'm edgy.
Yeah. First time I ever heard this song was at Max's Kansas City in New York. I was sent by Jack Richardson and company to go see Alice Cooper play at Max's and get rid of them. That he wanted nothing to do with them. But he was a very polite guy. So when Shep Gordon, the manager, came into the office and showed him Easy Action, Pretty's for You, their first two albums, he looked at these pictures of 5 creatures of indeterminate sex, and they had, braided mutton chops, and one of them was wearing a dress, and some guy was named Alice. He was very polite, but he was, very straight-laced guy. So he just said, yes, well, we'll have Bob go see the band, and if Bob likes the band, then I'll go see them, and we'll talk. So, and Shep thanked him. He thanked Shep. Shep walked out. He looked at me and went, "Get rid of them.
Get rid of them, as in like get them out, get them out of here, get them fired, get them.
No, get rid of them.
Okay.
So they sent me to New York because Shep, to his credit, has never taken no for an answer. So it was like, okay, when's he coming? When's he coming? When's he coming? And they finally sent me to New York to see them. And instead of getting rid of them, I was so taken by the performance. I was so sure. I mean, I looked around the room and everybody had spider eyes and was wearing spandex. They knew all the words. It was, they had jet black hair. It was like stepping into a Hieronymus Bosch painting, And I was like another vision of hell. And I thought, wait a minute, this is not rock and roll. This is like the beginning of a cultural movement. So I went bounding up the stairs, with my teenage enthusiasm and just said, we'll do it. We will do it. We think you guys can make hit records, said a guy who has never made a record. And they go, well, we think you can too. So I said, okay, we'll do it. And then I got outside and I was thinking, I am so fired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sent you down to get rid of them.
They sent me down and I did the opposite. Anyway, I came back, fought for it. And Jack said, all right, enough already. And he said, if you like it so damn much, you do it.
And you did.
And he made it possible.
Did you know when Alice broke after the records you made for him that okay, I have an affinity for this, and I think I might be able to keep doing this?
I had already done some production with Jack. I'd already done a group from Toronto called Cat, and worked on a band from Muncie, Indiana, who were called, along with 7,000 other bands, The Chosen Few.
Yeah. And the not so unique.
Yeah, the not so chosen. Yeah, and a couple of other things I can't remember, but
an affinity like this record.
No, I knew from there, from watching him and from working in the studio with him. I just went, oh, God, I'm good at this. I like this. Mm-hmm. This is really good, and he knew it. More importantly, he knew it. This was a guy who was a professional record producer. He pegged me, and he decided to teach me. And honestly, I owe my whole career and pretty much my life to Jack Richardson.
Did your phone start ringing a lot more after the Alice records came out?
Yeah, I was hot for about 6 minutes, as you are when you have a hit record. But sure, I mean, I got to do Mitch Ryder in the band Detroit. And then because we did Rock and Roll, the Lou Reed song, and we did such a good version of it, Lou heard it and he said, well, okay, I want that guy for the next album after Transformer.
Can we listen to that right now? So just take a listen to this.
But she's not afraid to die. All of her friends call her Alaska.
A little uplifting dance music for a happy morning there, Tom. Listen, this was...
This is, I should point out, this is Lou Reed's Berlin album, produced by my guest Bob Ezrin back in 1973. Before you tell me about it, I want to point out that when you were listening to... I don't want to make too much of this, but when we were listening to Alice, you were kind of looking at me and smiling and bobbing your head back and forth. You looked a little different when we were listening to that one. You kind of shrugged your arms, you looked down.
Well, I love Lou Reed. And he was not just someone that I worked with, but someone I stayed in very close touch with, and I kind of loved like a cousin, So his death hit me really hard, and when I hear him, I just get a little wistful,
Yeah.
But I'm really thankful for the opportunity to have done this with him, and a few other things too that people don't really know about. This new Nils Lofgren album out that's called Blue with Lou.
Yeah.
That's because I introduced Lou Reed and Nils Lofgren during the making of Nils' solo album.
Right.
Which I was producing, and we were having a kind of a lyrical challenge. So I said, I think we may need a co-writer on some of these things. And Nils is like, well, I'm not really good at that. And I said, what do you think of Lou Reed? And he just looked at me like, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So I picked up the phone and called Lou, and Lou said, sure, come on over. So we went over to Lou's house, and they hit it off. It turns out that Lou wrote like 13 pieces with Nils, 3 of which got on Nils's album, 3 got on Lou's albums, and now there's a bunch that hadn't been recorded. And so Nils has put out an album of those songs called Blue with Lou.
So take me back. I want to go back to another moment of I can't believe this. So you make a version of Rock and Roll. You get this call from Lou Reed. He wants to follow up the Transformer album.
Yeah, Dennis Katz called me.
The Transformer had made him into a very unexpected pop star.
Yes, and an uncomfortable pop star. He didn't want to be there.
Well, Take a Walk on the Wild Side became this global hit, right?
Yeah.
That must have made him uncomfortable for a guy who was always on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, he never saw himself as being part of the pop movement. He was an artist. He was part of that whole Andy Warhol scene, part of the Factory and stuff. And when that became a sort of mainstream top 20 kind of record, it pushed him out of what he considered to be the legitimacy of this struggling and misunderstood artist. Now he's understood.
Yeah.
No, please don't understand me.
That's the worst thing that can happen to an artist.
Oh,
to be
it's the worst
understood.
thing, yeah.
So hold on. So you're what, 23?
I was 22.
22, and you get this call.
Oops, sorry. When we started, I should know that. Don't hit the microphone with your hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Though I want to point out, you did remove a bracelet already.
I did.
Like, this is the most conscious guest I've ever had of how.
Oh, come on.
No, that's like most people. That's very kind of you to do that, so we don't have rattling in the background.
Yeah.
But you would obviously know these things. Lou Reed calls you. He says, "I want you to make the follow up to this
we met
massive
here.
record. I like the version you did of one of my old songs."
Yeah, we met here in Toronto. We met at Massey Hall, where Lou was headlining and the opening band was Genesis.
Oh yeah.
I went with Dennis Katz, and we were sitting. Dennis was sort of manager cum A&R guy for RCA at the same time, and we were sitting there. I watched this opening band, and then Lou came on, and but I said to Dennis, "Look, I'm honored, and I'm dying to meet Lou, but I want to work with that kid with the flower on his head."
Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Seriously. And I was just like, who is he? That's amazing, right? And lucky me, I got that call later.
We're getting there. So you meet Lou. I will say this. I like, as an interviewer, I would be terrified to meet Lou Reed.
He was pretty, not intimidating is a bad word. I mean, he is intimidating for people who don't belong to we're in the same business.
Yeah. So you weren't too intimidated?
Well, on a creative level, no, not at all. On a personal level, a little bit, because he was professionally surly. It was his thing, and but the ice got broken very early on. We met after the show, and then we went to my house on Summerhill Avenue here, the house that Glenn Gould used to visit Cornelia Foss in.
Oh, my Lord.
Did I ever tell you that story?
No. We'll get to
That's another one.
That's a whole other story. Yeah.
Anyway,
we'll do that one at the piano.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
So he came over to the house, and we sat on the living room floor, and he played me some songs, and they were good Lou songs. But I said to him, you have a way, you can tell a life in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And it's great, and it's evocative, and there's lots of holes. We fill it in as listeners and people paying attention. But we we're left wanting to know more. What happened to that person? I said, for example, you wrote this song called Berlin. And there are these two people, and I'm intrigued. I get so far with them, but what happened to the rest of the story? So what if we were to do something like that, like Berlin, where we told a story in a song, and then we followed the characters through the whole, I didn't know what a concept album was, but I had this idea that it would be a whole story. And then it just sort of hit me wait a minute, it's your song. We don't have to do a song like Berlin. Let's do Berlin. And he just loved that.
Right.
His eyeballs, lit up. I mean, he saw that as a brilliant idea. He said, "Give me a few months, I'll be back." And he went away, and he came back and sat on the same floor with me and played me Caroline Says, and wow, they're taking her children away.
Upbeat.
Oh my God. So anyway, but I was listening to that stuff, and I'm going, this is more than just rock music. So give me a month and I'll be back. And that's the first time when I went into my head and heard an orchestra, and then could translate it. And working with Alan Macmillan, who could actually write, I was terrible at writing. He was my Salieri, and I was just spewing out this stuff, right? And we wrote the charts for that record. And then when Lou and I got back together and he heard these things, I was sort of playing them on the piano and singing horn lines and everything, he was going, "Oh my God, this is..." So that's how it happened.
I want to talk about a couple of things here. One, I want to talk about the reception the record got, but I also want to talk about just generally with you today a little bit about like how you set up the atmosphere in a studio, like some of the more ineffable parts of production that we don't necessarily talk about, not moving the faders, not orchestrating necessarily. And from what I understand, and I didn't know the man, but Lou was in a bit of a dark period, right?
He was. It was a very difficult time for him. Yeah.
I mean, and drugs and maybe some questions.
Yeah, he wasn't alone, by the way. I mean, me too. And
both you guys really?
Well, I didn't really know what it was, but I got into it while I was in London with him, and David Bowie was hanging around, and Mick Ronson, who was like the sweetest man, and now they're both gone. It's very sad. I love those two. But yeah, and we had Jack Bruce in the band. Jack had challenges. Lou had challenges. We all had challenges. Yeah. So there was stuff floating around. It was not as bad as people sometimes like to imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually got a record done.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, and it didn't take very long. So
how do you do it? How do you make a record in a situation like that? Besides, you just do it, but like...
you're 22, 23 years old. You're invulnerable. It takes a lot to knock you down. So, and you're burning with that kind of adolescent or post-adolescent energy. I mean, I think the most creative period of anybody's life is in their early 20s. It's not that we die and lose it all after 30, which is what I was afraid of. But I think that sort of 19 to 23 range. I mean, look at all the famous artists and I mean, from music to, poetry, Dylan Thomas, to the Beatles, to great painters and all that stuff. That was the period when they were most explosive in their creativity. Mm-hmm. So we were explosive. We were exploding all over the tape and exploding all over the room. And the stuff that was happening, even when someone may not have been at 100% capacity, even that stuff was really great. There was something about Lou when he was a little bit kind of screwed up, where he sounded drunk, and that's when I got that vocal that you just played.
Right. What do you like? I'm trying to figure out how to ask this. Has there ever been a time where you go, wow, I made it through that, where others haven't? Like others, contemporaries of yours, haven't survived drugs in that industry the way that you have?
Yeah. I mean, I consider myself to be the luckiest guy on the face of the earth on so many levels. So every day of my life is kind of, wow, I can't believe I'm here, holy moly.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's always those, but there were sort of mini cases. There were a few projects where things got really out of hand, and getting out the other side was questionable for a minute, but we always did. Right. I always did. The people I worked with always did. I mean, at the end of the day, we were really about the stuff that we were making. That was really the focus.
So when you make the stuff, so Berlin, I mean, I can talk about it now. I mean, Berlin got some pretty bad reviews when it came out. Someone called it the most depressing album ever made. I mean, these days...
And somebody called it the Sgt. Pepper of the 70s.
And there's been this sort of reappraisal as one of Lou Reed's most impressive albums. I know, like, I was born in the late 80s, and I got into the Velvets.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm actually talking to you?
Yeah, give it up. So I was, I mean, the late 1880s, Bob.
Can somebody find me an adult please, that I can talk to?
The late 1880s. Don't worry about it.
Go ahead.
But listen, I got in. It's an interesting perspective to have, because I got into the Velvets when I was probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years old. So like this, I wasn't around for any of the original makings of these
Did
records.
they have music down east?
No, it was just bagpipes.
It was, yeah,
I had the Rankin family.
Yeah.
That's all. A great big C.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the sound of waves crashing.
And fiddles.
Yeah. You produced all of those things, by the way.
Indeed, yeah.
Why do you think that album's been reappraised?
Listen, I think that it's a very it's raw and venturesome. I think the playing on it is spectacular. Like these players were at their very best at that moment in their lives. And the songs, they're Lou Reed songs they can sometimes be incredibly uplifting. And you don't think that when you're hearing a guy talking about someone having their children taken away, and it's that slow and everything. But when we did it live at St. Anne's in 2006 in Brooklyn, I turned up the tempo a little bit. We had a orchestra on stage and stuff, and these songs just became joyous, and the audience was, they were having an amazing time. It was an uplifting experience. So there is that, and it's kind of subtle in there. You don't get a set of instructions when you open up one of these things. You just put it on, but it does, I think, touch viscerally on a whole lot of different levels. People, it's about your fears, it's about your longing, it's about anger. That somebody else would have broken both of her arms. That line, I mean, really, Or the best line on the whole album is, "I'm just the water boy. I'm not the one doing this, right? I'm just the water boy. The real game's not over here." And there's so many brilliant moments lyrically, and some really great music.
I'm having a great time talking to you. I want to listen to some more music. Take a listen to this.
I feel untitled Saturday night. 9 o'clock, the radio's the only light. I hear my song and it pulls me through. Come to the throne, tell me what I got to do. I got to
Get up.
Gene's a good bass player, hey?
Yeah.
That's a bit of Detroit Rock City by Kiss from the album Destroyer, produced by Bob Ezrin. The tick-a-gun, I don't think I was expecting to hear that.
Well, no, he wasn't expecting to play it either.
No.
We came up with the part, but it was tough for them. I mean, these arrangements were a little more sophisticated than what they had done before, and
is that why they wanted you? Is that why?
I don't know. No, I think why they wanted me was because Alice was doing so well. And I think Alice was an inspiration to those guys. They loved that music. But I ran into them in the stairwell at City TV. Here in Toronto, they were coming down from an interview, and I was heading up. And as they were coming down the stairs, I met Paul Stanley, who was like 8.5 feet tall, and I had heard from a kid. I used to have my phone number used to be listed here, so I used to get this kid, Mike Longmans, who would call me all the time and say, "Dude, you got to listen to this." And I don't think he used the word "dude" in those days, but he said, "Bob," and he goes, "You got to hear this.
Pal.
You got to hear this group, Kiss, man. They really need a producer. Seriously."
Wow.
So then I'm going up the stairs. They're coming down the stairs, and I stopped Paul in the stairway, and I said, "I'm Bob Ezrin," and he said, "Oh, I know who you are." And I said, "Well, that's funny because I know who you are.
Yeah.
Are you happy with your records?" And he said, "Yeah." "Why?" I said, "No reason, but if you ever get to a point where you're not, give me a call. I love your band."
Wow. And he said, well, this guy, he shows
And then I think
bold is what I said earlier.
I think what happened was Bill O'Coin said, "Well, we need a more commercial sound." And when he mentioned my name, Paul went, "Oh, I met that guy. I like him."
So when back to the atmosphere stuff, did I hear a story that you wore like a coach outfit and had a whistle with Kiss?
Yeah, it's wonderful how history is distorted over time. I did have a whistle.
So you showed up to the studio with a whistle?
I did have a whistle, and because it was impossible, it was like herding cats. These were New York street guys, and they weren't used to being told what to do and when to do it. And we had a budget, we had a timetable, we had to get shit done, and also we had this very complicated music for them.
Right.
With
triplets and everything.
With triplets and everything. Or, hey, how about 7/8?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Yeah. So we actually had to, we were rehearsing at SIR, and I'd say, okay, well, let's just do this in A. And somebody went, "Huh?" And I was like, "You don't know where A is." And they go, "Not really. That's this." So I go, "Okay, put your instruments down." And I brought in a blackboard, and we just went to school. It was really more. You
taught them theory a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of theory. It was really more about rhythm than it was about. I mean, they knew what an A was.
I know what you mean, but you were like, "This is."
But I was like, well, let's do 4 on the floor. What's 4? Where are we? So I literally brought in a blackboard, and we did little lessons. This is going to be our language from now on, boys. Okay.
Right.
And then when we got to the studio, it was pandemonium. So I went around the corner. There was a great kind of like a gift store with all these notions and stuff in it, and I bought a whistle and several pairs of handcuffs.
Just handcuffs?
Yeah.
To try and keep them
in line. See, you
line.
haven't really done your research.
To keep them in line.
You don't know about the handcuffs. No, it wasn't them. The handcuffs wasn't for them. But The handcuffs were for some of the staff at the record plant at the time while we were making the record. Anyway, that's a long story.
Sounds
we
like
had a war with Grand Funk Railroad at one point.
About what?
They were in the other studio.
Oh, yeah, right on. So you handcuffed them.
We had to, I mean, this just couldn't be allowed.
I don't know. I don't know about handcuffs. I know about duct tape.
Yes,
Do you want
duct
to
tape.
take a listen to this?
So I went from day to day. My life was in a rut. Till I thought of what I'd say. Which connection I should cut.
Yeah.
I was feeling part of the scene.
And here it comes, folks. I walked right out of the machinery. My heart going boom, boom, boom.
He said,
What?
grab your things, I've come to take you home.
Okay, so when this song was written,
Peter
the last-
Gabriel, Solsbury Hill.
Peter Gabriel,
Bob Ezrin,
Solsbury-
producer, here with me
Solsbury
right
Hill.
now.
So Peter,
I'm not letting you produce this interview, Bob. I'm getting in there.
Okay. I can't help it.
I'm only joking.
No,
I
can't
I like having you here. I'm only kidding around.
That's okay.
Sorry, right.
So when Peter Gabriel, they approached me to produce Peter Gabriel. This was him stepping out of Genesis for the first time, his first ever solo thing, and that was a really big deal for him.
Yeah.
And quite frightening. So-
Massive band at the time, right?
They were massive,
especially in
and-
the UK, like huge in his
yeah,
hometown.
they were massive, and you know, a solo career is it can be scary at the best of times. But this was like, wait, you mean you're going to walk away from that and start something new? Anyway, so my task was to make that transition work for him and get him an album that would, you know, that was important enough that he wouldn't have to look back. And so part of the process was I brought him and his wife and their little daughter, Anna, who's now a filmmaker and quite beautiful and wonderful, and brought them to New York where I was living and rented Ruth Gordon and Garson Kanan's apartment. Who's Ruth Gordon? She's the old lady in Rosemary's Baby, the next door neighbor. Who's Garson Kanan? He's one of the greatest screenwriters of all time. And this was their flat in Beekman Place in New York. We rented it for, I think, a month. And Peter's job was to come to my house every day and sit at my piano and write. And I would stay in the back. And anytime I heard something I really liked, I'd run down the hall and go, record that.
Right.
And so that's how we got started.
So you would just be up working at something else, listening in the background.
Yeah. Yes, because I had multiple projects going at the time, as kind of like today, huh, Jenny?
So you had a bunch of stuff on the go.
A bunch of stuff happening all the time. So anyway, but so then we got together in Toronto. I put together a band.
In Toronto, you made this record.
We made this record here.
Right.
On Hazelton.
Was it to get him out of
Yes.
the
It was
hustle and bustle of New York and the fame of the UK?
Well, no, he didn't live in New York. He was just there writing.
I know, but you didn't make it in New York.
But
why in Toronto?
Because I had a studio here by then that was really good, and I was quite sure it would work well for him. I didn't want to be away from my family any more than I had to,
nice.
And so anyway, I put together a band of it was like the Dirty Dozen. It was a bunch of people who he had mostly never met before, including Tony Levin, who's stayed with him all this time, and Steve Hunter, who played that guitar part that you just played. I mean, most of the time, that's all people know.
Yeah.
They hear that and they go, "Oh yeah, that's the Peter Gabriel song."
Yeah.
So anyway, Steve Hunter and Jimmy Malin, God rest him, and Alan Schwartzberg, a phenomenal drummer. He introduced me, Peter, to Larry Fast, who came and played synthesizers, and he said, and Joey Chirosky, who was in a band called Crowbar, who played piano, a local guy, and Peter said, "Can I have one Brit?" And I said, "Okay, you get one Brit, you get one draft pick, right? Who do you want?" And he goes, "Well, I'd like Fripp."
Robert Fripp.
Yeah. So I was like, can't you get somebody who's decent?
Yeah.
So we brought Fripp over, and Fripp joined the band. It was this group of people. I like to say that, that miracles happen when you have a confluence of disparate, brilliant personalities.
Yeah.
And These were as different as you could get. Every one of them came from a different discipline and had a different background. But when they got together and started playing this stuff, which we did live in the studio, it was unbelievably magical.
Bob, I just want to go back to something. So, like, I feel like we've talked about three different things here. We talked about sort of like managing and participating in the darkness around Lou Reed. We've talked a little bit about trying to contain the wildness of Kiss. And we're talking here about trying to making sure Peter Gabriel's comfortable and has the band that he needs. So can we just talk broadly about atmosphere here?
I'll tell you one thing before we get into atmosphere.
Please. Yeah.
So one of the songs that he wrote was called
Gabriel?
Solsbury Hill.
Yeah.
And it said, son, he said, an eagle flew out of the night. He was something to behold, blah, 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 blah. And son, he said, make your life a taxi, not a tomb. I said, no. He said, I'm sorry. I said, no, that's not going on this record. It's not happening.
You looked at Peter Gabriel and said, no, we're not going to do that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I said, no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And so we struggled to find the last line of that song right down to mixing. Like that song was not going on the record until we found a proper last line. And he came up with it finally. And we tried everything. We tried, does anyone here know Officer Muldoon? We even tried backwards masking because, people were really into that, Satan's voice. So we went, Strakeb Nadro Kareth, Tog Voy Loof, which when you turn it over says, fool, you've got the record on backwards.
Oh, but anyway, good. Excellent.
But at least it rhymed, right? And then the last day he looks at me and he goes, grab your things. I've come to take you home. And I go, yes!
There we go.
That's it.
So and you just knew it. You knew in your gut, right?
Oh, for sure. And I said, it's on. We'll do it. Yeah. And we cut the vocal right there, like while we were mixing the album.
But I guess that's what I'm trying to work out here is that, like, to me, I see the job of a producer as someone who comes on and sort of imposes themselves. And we're going to talk a little bit later in the interview. I want to talk a little bit about good and bad techniques with production, right? But like someone who comes in is like, hey, I'm going to work with George Martin. Here's how George Martin makes records. And I'm going to fit myself into this. I'm going to work with Daniel Lanois. This is how Daniel Lanois makes records. I'm going to go to Louisiana and wear a big hat and stuff like that. It'll be great. I see you trying to not customize yourself, but just trying to understand that there's something outside of the notes that they're playing that you need to facilitate to make these records happen, right?
Absolutely. And also there is no one way to do anything. I don't have a production style except for my personality. Yeah. That's my style, right? I laugh, I joke. I'm an up guy. I like to have an atmosphere of conviviality. I like people to be enjoying themselves. I want to hear the joy in the music. But my primary job when I'm working with somebody, first of all, you have to understand, like that person who is performing for you right now, they have severe performance anxiety because every performer in the entire world has severe performance anxiety. It goes with the territory.
Even Lou, all these guys?
Every one of them. It's what propels them. That's the dragon they chase, and so that because you could see, that when they come in, the minute the red light goes on, everybody freezes. They're like, oh, and then you don't get that great performance you saw at the club 3 nights ago or in a concert hall before that. So my job was to make the atmosphere. First of all, I needed to make them feel safe. I want the people I work with to feel safe. I want them to know that if they fall, I'll catch them.
Yeah.
I've got it.
Yeah.
I want them to understand that there's no mistake in my room, none. And so sometimes, when you play something you didn't count on and you go, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah.
So one of the techniques, it's not a technique. I hate to call it
sure,
that. I'm just reading sonotechnique here. That's why I said it. So one of the things that I do like to do is I never criticize anybody except for people like Alice or people that where we've been together for decades and we know each other so well. I can look at Alice and go, "Now that was terrible."
Yeah, right.
And he laughs and I laugh. But for most people, I will say, come inside, let me play this for you. And I get to a point in the song and I go, do you hear that? That's genius. That's brilliant. And they get very happy with themselves. And I say, that's the bar that you're setting for this thing.
You are setting for yourself here.
Yeah.
Right.
And here you are doing it, so it's not an unrealistic one. Why don't, if you don't mind, I'm going to hold you to the bar. And they all go, of course you should. That's what we want you for. So, it's a matter of inspiring them to do their best and to be the best at what they do that they possibly can be. And the only way that's going to work with people with performance anxiety is to not make them feel nervous that there is judgment on the other side.
Right. God knows I felt that way. I want to talk about maybe, not going to say a more negative experience, but certainly maybe a different experience in just a second. Before, though, we do that, though, because we hinted at it, you taped Peter Gabriel to a chair? Duct taped him to a chair?
Oh, I did more than that.
What's the story here?
Okay, well, we, in Nimbus, in that studio, which, by the way, is the building in which I met my wife, Jan, who
came in to see the interview
who's
today.
here with us and is my life.
Yeah, God love her. I'm happy she's here. I'm happy she was able to come.
Yes, me too. So we had 2 pillars in the middle of the studio that were structural. We couldn't move them when we got the building. And so we built the studio around them. And we were doing Modern Love, the song Modern Love, and the chorus is, oh, the pain, modern love can be a strain, and I was getting, oh, the pain, modern love, and I'm going, there's not a lot of pain in that line, Pete, and he would laugh, and I would laugh, and I go, I'll tell you what, you get 3 more chances, and if you don't get it, you're going up the pillar. And he was like, oh, sure, So he tries one, and I go, 2 more. And he tries one, and I go, 1 more. And because it wasn't right. Just wasn't right. So I said to Brian Christian, who the engineer was this big guy from Southside Chicago with muscles on him like a linebacker, right?
Yeah.
So we went into the studio. He lifted Peter up in the air. I got up on a ladder, and we duct taped him under his armpits to the pillar.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll get
and then we backed away, and I said, mic him.
Yeah.
And then we rolled the tape, and he was up there with his arms flailing, and he was screaming, oh, the pain, modern love. And we got it.
Just so you know, we're going to add that in post. We've got a definitely 100. That's the version that made it to the record?
Yes.
Oh, that's going to get there in post. So I want to talk again about, we'll say, a different experience. I don't want to characterize this as a more negative experience because, I want to get there. Let's take a listen to this.
We don't need no education.
We don't need to go very long on this, do we? Because everybody knows it. It's brilliant.
I love this part here.
Boom.
Yeah.
No. Boom, 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 boom. Now that I stole from Chic.
From Nile Rodgers.
Yes, I did.
Not that long ago. Bob Ezrin, by the way, here, a little bit of Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 from Pink Floyd's era-defining album, The Wall.
Yeah.
You stole that little bass line from?
Yeah, I was actually producing Nils Lofgren. We were finishing Nils' solo album at the Power Station in New York, and Chic was in the next room, and I was standing outside the door going, whoa. That was another one of those holy shit moments, right? Mm-hmm. I was listening to that going, whoa, that's really good.
Yeah.
And then when we were going through this song, Roger and I was thinking, you know what? We could do this. We could have like a disco beat on a Pink Floyd song.
Funky, yeah.
Yeah. And so we did, and everybody rose to the occasion. There's another great bass line right there, But when we cut it, they gave me 1 verse, 1 chorus. Sorry, I hit the microphone.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
1 verse, 1 chorus, and then guitar solo out. That was it. And I said to Roger, I think this could be a hit single. We need another verse, another chorus. He said, we don't do singles.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
I said, really? He goes, yeah, really. Can I swear?
Yeah.
I already have.
No, go ahead.
Oh, it's basically F you. We don't do singles.
Right.
So I said, oh, really? Okay. See you. Bye. And everybody left at 6, which they did every night. And then I stayed on with James Guthrie, and I had them copy that verse and chorus.
Yeah.
And cut the 2 together. I found a drum. I actually created that silly little drum fill in the middle. Mm-hmm. I just picked that out of another take and stuck it between the 2 of them. And now I had 2 verses and 2 choruses. And
exact same take. The second verse.
It's exactly the same. If you listen to it, it is exactly the same take.
So you created this single.
Well, yeah, because
this thing that could be a single, right?
Yeah, but it didn't take a genius. I mean, we needed 2 verses and 2 choruses, so we got them. Mm-hmm. And then being the guy who brought you Schools Out and other songs that had children featured, I just thought, okay, I know what I'm going to do on this, So we organized getting Nick Griffiths to go to the little high school around the corner and record 24 tracks of kids singing.
Wow.
We don't need no. It was great.
We don't need. Yeah, it's really, yeah.
Yeah, well, we had them do it straight. We had them do it with a Cockney accent. We had them do it in falsetto, and then we put it all together.
I mean, legend has it. This is a legendary album. Legend had it. The
Yeah,
band,
and I don't like you characterizing it as a negative or less than positive.
Well, the reason
experience.
here's the reason I do it is because legend has it that the band wasn't getting along at this time. That like David Gilmour, Roger Waters wasn't getting along at this time. The reason I say it's a negative experience is because I figure you have to go in there, and as I said, I want you to say it, but like I figure you have to go in there and mitigate more than just music.
As with every project you do, you're dealing with human beings, and you have to create an environment for them to be able to do their best. Then to do that, you got to understand them. You have to shut up for a minute and listen.
Yeah.
And watch.
Yeah, but they weren't, right? They weren't getting along.
They weren't, and it was made very clear to me by Roger at the beginning that he really, he fancied himself being Pink Floyd. He was Pink Floyd, and the others, he referred to them in not the most flattering terms, and he just said, the reason I need you is because you're going to deal with them. I can't deal with them anymore, which is not how it turned out. How it turned out was, in many ways, I got that band to play together and be together and create together and do really great stuff. I mean, there were things like we would have tea every day at 4 p.m., as you do.
Of course. Makes sense to me.
And so we'd go upstairs in Britannia Row, we'd have tea, and we'd talk about what we were doing, and we'd have another hour before they had to get in their BMWs, matching BMWs, and their matching little jackets, little leather jackets, with their matching briefcases, by the way, and go back to their demanding wives, all of them.
Yeah, right.
So at 4 o'clock we were having tea, and I had written a script of the album, The Wall.
Yeah.
Putting the songs that I had in a particular order to tell this story, and then there were holes. There were, I needed a song here that told this story. I needed a song here that told that. And when we got to where Comfortably Numb needed to live, we needed to get into Pink's head and find out what's going on. Why is he not well? And we needed to be here, and we needed to be in the key of D. Anybody got anything in the key of D?
Right.
And so David comes out with his little high strung, and he plays this, da 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 da, and I forget what lyrics he sang, but they were irrelevant to the story, but it was great.
Right.
And I went, oh my God, that's brilliant.
Even though David wasn't, quote, to Roger, quote unquote, Pink Floyd.
David wasn't really encouraged to write on the album except by me.
Right.
So, but Roger, to his credit, he accepted it, and then I said to Roger, this is genius. Take this home and let's write some lyrics. So he said, I'm not bloody taking that.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate
basically,
that.
Basically, yes. Yes. Broadcast corrected. I'm not taking that song home, and so go screw yourself.
Right.
And then the next day we came back. Oh no! And I said to him, and I don't know if it was literal or whether it was sort of implied, but I basically said, "So you don't really think you can do anything with this, huh?
Yeah.
No, you don't think you're up to it. Sort of, you don't think you're man enough." It was one of those, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, "Screw you!" And we had this big blow up, as we had all the time during the making of this thing. But they were always friendly and fantastic. And then the next day he came in and he throws this piece of paper at me, and it says, "There is no pain, you are receding. A distant ship, smoke on the horizon. You're only coming through in waves. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you're saying. When I was a child, I had a fever and my hands felt like 2 balloons. Now I have that feeling once again. This is not me." You know what I'm saying? I mean, I read that. I'm getting the goose flesh again.
Look at me right now. This is happening to me right now. I'm getting the goosebumps right now. Yeah.
For such a young fellow, it's a surprise.
An important song in my life. Are you kidding me?
But seriously, I read that and I just thought, this is pure genius.
How do you reflect on that album now? I mean, could you ever have guessed it would become considered one of the greatest albums of all time?
I knew it.
Really?
Yes, I knew it.
You knew this could be the Sgt. Pepper's. This could be the Pet Sounds,
you don't compare to.
You know what I mean? This could be talked in the same.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. There was a moment at which they were in dispute with Columbia Records. I don't know what the hell I was thinking of. They were in dispute with Columbia Records, who were trying to screw them out of half the royalties because technically they didn't have to pay double for a double album. And it just offended my sensibilities. And while we were finishing up mixing and all this stuff, one of the guys that I knew, I'm not going to mention any names, from Columbia, sent his secretary over to the mastering lab to collect the tapes. And I got a call from the receptionist. The mastering lab was right next door to the studio where we were finishing. And she said, there's a woman here from Columbia. She's here to collect the tapes. I said, what? She's here to what? So I went out to the front hall, and she was just a nice girl who was sent on a mission. She had no idea that this was dangerous to do, you know. She said, well, you know, Mike has sent me over here to pick up the tapes. And I said, now, what's your name? She said, whatever. And I said, listen, what your boss just sent you into a very, very dangerous place. You're not getting these tapes. He's not getting these tapes. And you need not to come back here, or I'll call the band, and then I can't be responsible for what's going to happen to you. And she's like, goodbye. And she's like out in the street. So at that point, I took the master tapes of The Wall home every night for a week while they sorted out their issues with Columbia, just in case there was a run on the vault.
Because you knew.
Well, you know, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. This is not really my place to do that.
But you knew it was special. You knew.
No, but I would lie there in bed, and there'd be this stack of tapes on the chair beside my bed where I was, you know, and I would just look at it and just go, you know, like, this is huge. This is monstrous. And what am I doing? You know, I got these tapes here. Anyway, I found a way to get them, to take them back and leave them there. But yes, I knew. I would look at that pile of tape and go, this is an amazing work. And then when I did finally finish it, I sat down in that house that I was renting on Kings Road in Los Angeles, which had a decent, not great stereo, but good enough. Stereo, by the way. That's a thing where you have two spots.
Okay.
And I
do play the banjo, Bob. I'm what they call a young fogey, so don't worry about it.
Okay, great. So I put it on and just sat and listened to the whole thing through from top to bottom by myself, and I was bawling like a baby by the end of it. I was, because I just thought, you know, this is really good work.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really proud of this. Yeah.
I'm glad. I mean, it's such an important album. I want to just talk about albums in general because, you know, this is a conversation that I'm having a lot on the show right now, sort of with the advent of streaming right now and the changing of the industry. You know, a lot of conversations I've been having with artists is kind of, why are you making an album in the first place? And some artists are coming in saying, I'll never make an album again. You know, I'll make a couple of singles.
Yeah.
As someone who, I mean, everything we've been talking about today has been...
It's all albums.
And you're an album guy, man. Like, well, no, sorry, that's how I see you. I see you as creating some of the greatest albums of all time. So how are you feeling now that the album might be obsolete?
You know...
Or will it?
I don't know. Oh, shoot. I hit that microphone again. Okay,
Don't worry
that's
about it.
25 cents.
That's all right.
I owe you. There you go. You can go in the swear jar.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you young people... No, I'm kidding.
Oh, my God. This was all going so well when you thought I was born in the 20s. Everything's okay.
Yeah. I don't know that the album will ever disappear, because I think that many of these people are writing all the time. And then they only have certain periods of time during which they can just record, and then they got to go back out and tour and do all that stuff. And they've got all these songs that they've amassed that they love, and and they want to record them all because they wrote them, and they want them to see the light of day. So I think that there are a lot of people who write like that, and whose touring schedule imposes on them the need to do recording in a block. Those people will tend to make albums. Then there's a whole bunch of other people whose touring schedule doesn't even allow the block. So you get like 4 days in LA and then 2 days in London and so on, and they're cutting a song at a time because it's all they've got time for. And a lot of what we're hearing, a lot of the song at a time stuff that's being released now is it's kind of a group effort. It's it's like a maximum collaboration.
8 songwriters, 4 producers.
Yeah, it's a hyper collaboration, basically. So you've got all these different people that are involved in the process, and really it starts at the top, which is the record company or manager or the artists themselves if they have power. They say, we're going to have a single, we need it now.
Yeah.
Now you start enlisting the troops, and you put together all these people who are they're building to suit.
Right.
Right, yeah. So we're building a single. It's not a matter of, what do you have to say today? What are you dying to express? What is it you need to get out of you? It's a matter that we require this thing that's going to do this for us. We're going to release it. It's going to get noticed. It'll help sell tickets or whatever merchandise. It'll help keep your brand up, whatever it is. So
That feels a little foreign to you. That feels different than...
It is. That is foreign to me because I do come from the kind of artist as auteur school, right? I do come from where the person who's performing, they wrote their stuff. And although I do, I believe that there are some amazing songs that have been written and they should be performed. And some people they may be great songwriters, but they're also great interpreters, like Alice.
Yeah.
Like when Alice sings rock and roll, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Elvis Presley.
Elvis Presley, one of the greatest interpreter of all time.
Frank Sinatra.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So there's room for it.
Yeah.
But I forgot what I was saying.
But there's something about an artist speaking their own truth.
Yeah, that's
too.
it.
I understand.
That's
yeah.
it.
So, but what about I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but what about technology? I mean, you were telling me stories about cutting the Roger Waters Another Brick in the Wall verse, right?
Yeah.
Or part 2 verse. And I noticed you did it. So I'll do this for the radio, but you did a slicing motion on one and a slicing motion on the other. I want to point out those were literal slicing motions because they were tape. You had to lift up and tape.
Yeah, we had to cut pieces of tape.
I mean, I don't want to get into some kind of we're going to put on a big boot and take out the power generators in Toronto conversation. But I do want to get your perspective because I'm someone who goes back and forth on this. Now that we have this technology like auto-tune that didn't exist when you were starting out, now that we have digital production like Pro Tools. I talked about this with someone this morning. I'm a big Django Reinhardt fan. When Django Reinhardt was making records in the 1930s and 1940s, it was like going to the moon. Yeah. And now you can make a record
or Les Paul, and it was going to the moon.
Yeah. And when you were making, now you can make a record in your basement. You can make a record on your phone.
Yeah. So the thing about this now is that because the tools have been democratized and are imminently affordable now. The good news is that anyone can make a record, and the bad news is that anyone can make a record. And so there's a lot of stuff. I just heard an interview that I did because I'm putting together this archive for the family, as you know. And I just heard this interview where this was over 10 years ago, and the guy was kind of prodding me, and he goes, "How many albums were released this year?" And I said, 77,000. And he said, and how many of those can be good? So he was leading. Well, that was then. There's 7,000 records being made an hour and released into the atmosphere. There's millions and millions of songs coming out every day as a result of the democratization of the technology. So that's good and it's not so good. And one of the big things that has been removed also just because of economics is we don't have those holy moments anymore because there's no scene.
Right.
Where's the club scene where people learn to play or do, there aren't clubs for people who are pop musicians.
Right. Where's Sonny Rollins going to the Blue Note when he's 16,
Right, but I mean even where's Abel? Where could the Weeknd play, on a weekend, if you will, and go down the street and see other people doing what he was doing? Where could Drake play in a club at the beginning? He couldn't. He was listening to music that was being put out. That was his scene. That was his neighborhood, if you will. And that's an entirely different experience. So we're missing that, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, that we all had to put in from our early teenage till our early 20s when we actually went out into the world. They don't exist anymore.
Right.
And except in some very special cases. And in those cases, those people are still doing amazing things, and they always will. And they'll do it with whatever technology is at their disposal. I love the stuff.
Yeah, do you use autotune?
Well, not autotune, no.
How do you feel about autotune?
No, I mean, some people love autotune. I don't like that particular plug-in.
I mean, a plug-in that pitch corrects.
Yes, I do pitch correcting. I do pitch correcting. I do time correcting. One of the great things about the technology is, if I get a performance from somebody, I can do just about anything to it that I can imagine, and so, but it's not like it's not like I say, okay, you sing, go home. We do discuss it. I do say okay, what are we trying to build here? What is it we're looking to do? Okay, here's what I need you to do, and I'll take care of the rest. And with people that I'm working with, for the most part, they're happy to let me just do what I do. And I always send it to them saying, what do you think? What do you think? And we, adapt according to what it is that they would like to see happen.
You don't sit back and go, my God, if I had this technology when I was making the wall.
No, because, in fact, there are things that I did on the wall that I can't do because technology won't let me do it now.
Like what?
You can't do tape flanging.
So, Tom, do you know what that means? Okay, so he knows what that means. I'm glad.
You can't do tape flanging. When you listen to, I'm trying to think of something that you could relate to, but if you go back to old singles like...
Listen, I'm an old guy. I keep on trying to tell you.
You're an old soul.
I'm an old soul.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to them.
All right.
The people that are listening.
I have a lot of wax cylinders at my house, man.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, right. Don't worry about me.
Anyway, so you can't do that. And there's other things that you can't do. And because we didn't have the technology to fabricate or create facsimiles of certain things, when we wanted something, we had to actually get the real thing. We actually had to go to Edwards Air Force Base and put PZM microphones on the tarmac in front of a huge Sikorsky helicopter to get the sound of that helicopter for the wall.
Right.
That's real.
There wasn't a helicopter plug-in.
No, there wasn't a sound effects library that was realistic enough. Right.
Yeah. What advice do you? I mean, you started a production school. What advice do you give to young producers?
Well, it's not just young producers. I think the advice that I give to our students and just any people that are striving and they want to be producers or programmers or singer-songwriters, whatever they want to do. We are in an age now where everyone, whether they like it or not, is in the media business. And so it's important to know more than just how to play four chords and write a top line. You need to know your tools, and you need to know also, you need to understand the platforms you're going to stand on when you start presenting yourself to the world well enough so that at least you're not being a puppet. You're not being just told where to walk and what to do. You're not just making your marks. That means, like on stages, they would put little marks on the stage. I'm talking to them, not you.
Good.
You take it easy.
Yeah, all right.
Relax. So, you're not
I want to point out he's gotten out a whistle and a chalkboard.
Exactly. We're not just making our marks. You're actually creating and you're being yourself, and you can do that because you understand the tools at your disposal. So I encourage all of them to know more than just the one thing they think they want to do.
What's the number one mistake producers make?
Gosh, I don't know.
I can give you other people's answers on that.
Yeah, what do other people say about it?
T-Bone Burnett said, the number one mistake producers make is trying to make it perfect.
Okay. That's good. Great T-Bone. I love T-Bone. He's very tall, and he has a lovely voice with a great accent, and he's also a really good musician.
He made some good records.
And he's made a few good records.
Yeah, he made the Raising Sand record and the...
Yeah.
So, but no.
I think there's a minefield out there, and you just have to be aware of it. You have to be aware at all times. So the number one mistake you can make, the worst, let's say it this way, because when you say what's the number one mistake that producers make, I don't know. I'm in the studio producing. I'm not in their room.
Right.
I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I do know that the worst thing you can do is to make the performer feel uncomfortable. That's it.
It's been nice to have you here, man. I'm happy we were able to make this happen.
Thanks, Tom.